So this week's Torah portion, actually, let me start with something else. Today's conversation is not, as most often the case, is not a clear, pronounced topic in our Torah portion. Today's conversation is about gratitude. And as we were actually just discussing a couple minutes ago, a few of us, gratitude is a very, you can see that gratitude is a central, the attitude of gratitude, the mindset of gratitude is a central part of Jewish thinking. It's, first of all, the word Jew comes from Yehuda, Yehudim. When Yehuda was one of the tribes. We're all called in that name, the tribe of Yehuda, Judah. That name comes from somewhere. In the Torah, our matriarch Leah thanked God for the birth of, she had 6 boys and 1 girl, and she thanked God when it came to her 4th boy. She thanked God for the child, and she said it's from the language of Yehuda, Oda. So the word, the name that we have as Jews, it comes from the idea of being grateful. In how our prayers are structured, I think across the board, I don't know every single prayer liturgy, across the board, we start off our day before we go to a prayer session, before we get into prayers, there's what we call the blessing, the morning blessings. You come down in the morning, and before you even have our coffee, to just get started, there's a couple of pages, a few blessings to recite. It's all thanking God for things, but it's thanking God for things which are very likely things we take for granted. And that's an important thing, because consciousness about what we have is an important prelude to being thankful for it. Like I was talking with Rhonda before, I've never had a problem with my hearing, thank God. Every morning, I thank God for my hearing as part of my prayers. That brings to my mind that while I take it for granted, because I've never had a challenge with it, being alive tells me I can't take it for granted, because a lot of people have challenges with their hearing. And the fact that I'm here about to start my day and my hearing is fine, my audiology is working, I say, thank God. What if I have a challenge in my hearing? Then maybe there also my prayers say, thank you, God, but for everything else, please give me my hearing. It's a prayer more than a gratitude exercise. But that morning prayer is really about trying to get us into a grateful mindset. Before we start that, the first prayer, there's 12 words we say. We teach our children from when they can speak. Say a formula. When we wake up in the morning, it's called Moda Ani. Moda Ani means thank you, like from Yehuda. It means thank you, God, for another day. So we start off the first words we say in the day, literally before we get out of bed, is thank you, God. Now, at 56, it makes a little more sense to me. But at 6, why should I? What do you mean? Everybody wakes up. Why should I wake up? It was a message. I can't remember if I got the message at 6, but I probably didn't. But the thing is that over time, the idea is we want to be able to inculcate into ourselves. The idea is don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted means, again, it's really two-pronged. It's saying this is something that I can't take for granted, because it doesn't just appear here. And then say, but who gave it to me? Yeah, we can go to another thing. I don't want to belabor it. We'll get into a second. Hey, good morning. No problem. We were just talking about gratitude, and I'm grateful you're here. Now, if you take an example, take a kid who you're paying for tuition in school. They're in school. They don't, or think about when you yourself when you went to school. Did you process what your parents were putting into the tuition? Your job was to study and get a good get a good mark or something. I don't know if it's possible for kids to really process what goes into their tuition process, but that's just okay. That's life. But every once in a while, saying, by the way, not everybody has this. You can't just take it for granted. That's a very important exercise that we go through every single morning about our own blessings, because everybody has blessings. If you're a sentient, conscious human being, you have blessings. You have something to be thankful for. You say, "Oh, it's not enough." Get to that in a second. But to be everybody, and it's. I've expressed it to people sometimes. The fact that our first word in our liturgy, the first word of prayer, so after we get, the morning, thank you God for another day of consciousness. After we get to the morning blessings, as before we get started, thank you God for my vision and everything else. When we get into regular prayers, our first word is Hodu, which is also thank God. The rabbis are teaching us you can't even start the first word of prayer unless you're in a grateful mode. Gratitude is a very important part of this. So now, I'm just gonna mute all for background noise. There we go. Okay. So this week's Torah portion, on the face of it, has almost nothing to do with gratitude. But if you dig a little bit, we're going to be able to find, and we're going to use as a way into this conversation, something about the Torah, this week's Torah portion, which is more about, our relationship with our belongings and about pledges to charity. So, example, if I were to pledge this, say this now belongs to the synagogue. I did not say that. I said if it would belong to the synagogue, and I would have no right to use it for my personal usage. Words mean something. If I said I'm giving $100 to the American Cancer Society, I got to do it. Words mean something. So a person was able. The Torah talks about a person pledging to the temple. Pledging to the temple means the temple owns it. The temple can sell it. The temple gives it to the public usage. The functionaries, the Kohanes, the Levites, but it's not theirs anymore. What if I have an acre of land in South Jersey, and now I say I want to give it to the temple? So, and then afterwards I say, you know something? Maybe not. Well, then I'd say that acre is worth $15,000. I have to give it $15,000. I can buy it from the temple. I'm talking about the big temple. I'm not talking about us here. The Torah is talking about the what's called the base of English, the temple. So I can take it back. There is I can buy it back. There's a certain type of a commitment which the Torah says you can't even buy it back. You gave it, done. It belongs down to the temple. The temple's making it a park. You can go be part of the park, but you can't get it back. So I want to talk about this a little bit. What do we learn from that? Let's look at text 1. I'm going to share a screen. Okay, this is on this week's Torah portion. If a person consecrates some of the field of their inherited property to God, the valuation shall be according to its sowing, and the Torah gives us an evaluation. An area that requires a chomer of barley seeds. In other words, it's an area. A chomer is a Torah measurement. Let's say it's an acre that you need a full barrel of barley seeds. Let's say assume that a chomer is a barrel to fill this acre. That is 50 silver shekels. Okay, fair enough. I can buy it. That's what it said. If I gave it away, if I pledged to the temple, I want to buy it back. I got to pay 50 shekels. Text 2. However, oops, here we go. The Torah brings a different language of dedicating, of consecrating, of pledging, anything that a person declares chedem to God. Chedem is a Hebrew word from any of his or her property. And it means, from the context you see, it means this is also going to the temple, out of my property. Whether a person, an animal, or part of their inherited field should not be sold, nor shall be redeemed, for all chedem is holy of holies to God. Once it's chedem, it's done. Holy means it's separate. So it seems like you can make something holy, you gave it off the temple, and then there's super holy, you can't even, once they have it, you can check in, you can't check out. You're not getting it back. Now, for those in the know of Hebrew, chedem is a very odd word, because chedem is in the Hebrew means it can mean forbidden. It's usually it can mean destroyed. In a ban of excommunication in Jewish law. It's called a chedem. It's not usually used like Mr. Super Holy. What is a chedem? So why is it called chedem? Let's take a look at text 3, where it's used. The word chedem is used in the Torah later on. It says anything that a person declares chedem to God. Oh no, sorry. Next, go to 3. Burn the statues of their idols on fire. This is about idolaters. Idolaters in Torah, those who they were seen as very, not only what they believed, but they were very inhuman in the way they dealt with others, and therefore the Torah is was very allergic to it. So it says, burn the statues of their idols on fire. Do not covet the silver and gold upon them. Take it for yourself. It's all, if it was part of idolatry, get rid of it, lest you stumble because of it, for it is an abomination before your God. Do not bring abomination to your house, lest you become chedem like it. Shall other with violet and horrid for the chedem. Okay, a little nasty, but the idea is chedem means off the table. Why do we use that as a term for something we dedicated to the temple, and now it's so super dedicated that I can't even buy it back? So here in text 4, we have from one of the primary Torah commentaries, the linguists, it says anything that a person declares chedem to God means, even though chedem means destroyed, even though the item itself is not destroyed, vis-a-vis the owner, it is as if it's destroyed, for it can no longer benefit. The commentary here is saying, Rabbi Kimchi is saying, is an ancient commentary, saying when a person uses that, sometimes when they get, you want to buy this, or I give it. I mean, we have a relationship with our stuff. Leave it away, or you sell it. It's not, you never buy it back. If you need it, you might buy it back. There's some things we want nothing to do with it anymore. Get rid of this. I don't want it. Which means I see no good in it. I don't see any future good in it. So what do? I give it to the temple. But I want nothing to do with this. That with the Torah uses, says the word chedem. That's when people say, I don't want anything to do with this. So it means that the person psychologically has repudiated selling something, donating something it's kindness. You don't need it. Maybe you do need it. The other person needs it more. Getting rid of something is burning your bridges with that thing. And the person will use the term chedem. I'm giving chedem, gives the temple, and the feeling is a repudiation. Others will say, I donated to the temple. Why would they use that word? Because what they're doing is they're saying, and their attitude is, I want nothing to do with this. Okay. Now, because we have nothing to do with it anymore, what the Torah is saying is, okay, then it belongs to the temple. If you gave this and you totally rejected whatever this object was, or this money, whatever it is, then you gave it, what you did was you pushed it out of your sphere, and now literally you burned your bridge with it. Now, what is what does this all mean to us? Look at text 5, one of the great thinkers of the 13th century, the Sefer Achilles. He says, what is the spiritual lesson here? As long as the Jewish people are devoted to God's Torah and mitzvahs, only good will come to them. This is, this is his Rabbi Aaron of Barcelona. His was saying the Torah is telling us that we recognize that God is your creator, and we're committed to God. Then godliness is in our life, and godliness is goodness. And those people who are committed will be supported by an abundance of blessing and a generous and pure spirit. The opposite, curses and destruction before their enemies. Now, so here we say, the Torah is saying, you're good with me, God says, I'll take care of you. Now, therefore, if someone in a fit of melancholy utters an expression of curse or hate about their money or their land, what if someone has something? And conceivably, if they have it, God bless them with it. But they're saying, I don't want anything to do with this. Which they said the expression of curse or hate about their money or land, which are really blessed. In other words, God gave it to them. The Torah informs us that one cannot really remove an item from the domain of blessing to another cursed domain. So you can't really do that. If God gave it to you as a blessing, it's a blessing. For everything that belongs to a Jew really belongs to God, was blessed. Nevertheless, because we now know that this person really wants to remove this item from their possession, we'll give them what they wished for and return the item to its true master, and then it will become truly whole. So what Rabbi Aaron is saying is that when the Torah it tells us that when a person says, I want nothing to do with this, and uses the term chayrev, which means to destroy it, a severed relationship with it. God says, if you're not appreciating what I gave you, I'll take it. If it's something you valued, but you wanted the charity to benefit from it, you give it. And if you feel that you actually want it back in your life and you want to redeem it for the money, it's no problem, because it's something you got, something you valued it, and even though you valued it, you gave it away because someone else valued more. It was a moral thing. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's a beautiful thing. But when someone repudiates a blessing in their lives because they don't see it as a blessing, God says, something. You can't have it back. You can benefit from it if you want, if within proper parameters. Like I said, if we made this acreage a public park, but if you don't appreciate it, better that you don't have it.
All right.
Yeah.
But what about that first line, that people who are devoted to God and to His vote, only good will come to them?
Yeah, you're saying life doesn't show it that way, right?
There are a lot of people who are devoted to God and His vote, and
so without a doubt, and you're probably not going to find anybody where to the viewer they get only good come to them, because life isn't like that. Everybody's got a mixed bag. I think that what Rabbi, you can be sure that when in the 13th century Barcelona, he also didn't have only good, this rabbi. But the idea is that without looking at it concretely, in what my bank account is, or if I got what the things I was hoping for, connection with God is connection with goodness. And connection with God means looking at my world and seeing the goodness. So I was mentioning to Rhonda before that, we get up in the morning, we say different blessings, and one of them is giving sight to the blind. And well, actually, back when we were neighbors, I went to, I know Janice, 30-something years. I went shortly after I moved there. I had this challenge with my eyesight, and I don't know if I told you about it then, but I was in the hospital, and there was, doctors were saying, I was losing pieces of vision, and they couldn't stop it. Right now, every morning when I say thank God for my vision, it's I go back to that spot because thank God I haven't had a problem with it in whatever, 29 years, 30 years, I can't remember. But I looking at it and say, that was not a good thing. I didn't ask for that. I had a wife and a baby, a new young wife and a baby. I want to have a life. I don't want to be blind. Looking at my life more in its totality and understanding that everybody's got their challenges. To say that God gave me that challenge and thank God helped me past it so that I can see fine, Baruch Hashem. And maybe that was one of the things I needed for my own development. Because again, I'm not asking for this kind of lesson, but the fact is I spend time in hospitals. I spend time with people by the hospital bed. I almost always see myself in that bed. Because I was there not what I'm in Cornell for a week. We can't stop it. We don't know what's wrong with your eyes. It was a scary place to be. It helped me understand what it was like, because before that I'd barely been to doctors. And thank God pretty much since then. So around that, it's not, there's no way a man who knows what life is about and it says you're gonna get all good. But if you're on that wavelength, and you're feeling cared for, first of all, we're going to say that itself is kind of a lightning rod for blessing. Not all good, but a lightning rod for blessing. And you start to frame your world a little differently. So if there's someone, if my kids totally trust what they do, that everything I do is for their benefit, then even if I do something that they don't like, hopefully they'll be able to say, okay, there must be something going on. And maybe later on I'll be able to speak, I'll be able to figure him out later. Right now, it doesn't, I don't like it. If we feel secure with God, that's what it is. Not only committed to Torah mitzvahs, it means that what you do, it's that you recognize you're not alone. And you recognize that God is in control of life as much as we have plenty of volition. And therefore, we feel a life blessing. And a person can feel blessed when you look and say, they don't have this, they don't have that. Gratitude and feeling blessed is a subjective thing. And we all probably know people who in situations where I can't understand how they live it, and they feel blessed. They feel blessed with what they had. Again, I'm not asking for anyone's challenges, but people who I know who've had children with severe special needs, it changes their whole life. It keeps them in a prison in many ways. From the outside, it's hard to understand, and yet I hear people say, "This is my biggest blessing." And I say, "God bless you," but it's really very much an attitude. So it's not the idea is that connectedness hopefully will make us recognize blessings that ordinarily would not look like blessings. So let's take a look at this on that note, text 6. This is from a more contemporary rabbi looking to analyze what this whole idea of the cherem type of donation is. It's on page 54, text 6. In my humble opinion, the concept of cherem, again, cherem means destroy, but in this case, it's giving something to the temple, is as follows. In truth, one who declares their property cherem does not intend to donate it to the priest or to the temple treasury. The idea of cherem isn't saying, oh, the temple has budgetary issues. I have something extra to donate. I'm giving it. That's not what it is. They don't call that cherem. Rather, they just simply declare cherem, curse. They say, I don't want this. All the personal laws of cherem, they are there only to fix the curse. I don't want it, so who's going to take it? The temple. So everything here is there's about what do we do with the curse? The person it feels so disconnected from whatever he has. Indeed, the Mishnah, that piece of Talmud, does not say the owner gives it to the Kohen. The Kohen is the representative of the temple. Rather, it says that the property is given to the Kohen, implying that this was not the owner's intention. They weren't sitting there thinking about how I'm going to get a tax write-off or what I want to do with the things and give it to a temple. They're saying, I don't want this, whatever this is, this old junker or whatever it is, I don't want it in my life. The Torah's way of handling there's not the owner's intention, rather the Torah's way of handling the chayrim. The idea is that the Torah says, okay, so you don't want it, it's going to go to the Kohen, to the temple. Not that you gave it to the Kohen. Also does not say that the field is given to a Kohen like a truma. Truma was a tie, implying that it is given to the Kohen like other rights of priesthood. Rather, giving it to Kohen is simply the protocol for a chayrim field. Since you're dumping this thing, and you happen to say that it's and that thing goes to the temple. So you're dumping it, it goes to the temple. If you don't want it anymore, God will take it back. The Sefer HaChinuch, the one we had in the text 5, writes explicitly, as we said, the chayrim is a curse the owner pronounces on the property. Therefore, it becomes forbidden for the owner to derive any benefit from it. We obey the owner's wishes to make it a cursed field. What does that mean? Cursed means you don't want it anymore, don't have it. We fix the curse by giving it to a Kohen. Therefore, once the chayrim field is in a Kohen's possession, it becomes permitted for anyone, even the original owner, to benefit from it within what the temple parameters or the Kohen's parameters. Okay, so now this is the idea is that what this Torah portion is driving home to us, that what we have in our lives is a gift from God. And like we said before, getting up in the morning and saying, I have mobility, I have a roof over my head, I have clothing, I have food. I shouldn't just take that as a baseline and say, but I want that. First say, wow, not everybody has what I have. It doesn't just materialize out of nowhere. Thank God. My intelligence, all of those things. Now, from here, say to God, you know something? I could use more. That's fine. That's we're all like that. But the first is to recognize. So let's look at on 56 says gratitude is a conduit for blessing. And here we're going to take a look. Actually, before I go to this one, let me just give you some definition of some terms. We're going to take a look at a piece of Talmud here in text 7. We're going to be talking about the Mashiach, the Messiah. And the Talmud talks about the Messiah, the Messianic era. Everything is beautiful. Everything is godly. Godliness comes to the fore. And it's in the personage of a leader who triggers it, the Mashiach. Now, in the process, in Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, in the process of leading to this, it says the world's going to go through some difficult times. And in what's probably metaphoric language of the Torah, it says Gog and Magog. That's the language. It's going to come up. That's why I'm mentioning it. It's like a leader of called Gog, of a nation called Magog. In other words, the Jewish people are going to have a challenge. And in a time of challenge, God will help us out. Now, 2,600 years ago, the Jews have had challenges many times. When the Jews had their own land, because we're indigenous to Israel, just in case anyone tells you otherwise. So when we had our own land, and we had our own, it's 3,000 years ago, we had our own land, and we had our own Commonwealth. We actually were fighting with each other. It ended up 2 Jewish Commonwealths, one in the north and one in the south. But the fact is that that was the synagogue I don't go to, but it was all Jewish. So one of our leaders his name was Hiskiel. He's from the southern kingdom of Judea, and his name was Hezekiah. Hiskiel. They were being attacked by the Assyrians, Sennacherib, Sancherib, and there was this battle, this threat from Sancherib, and God miraculously saved the Jewish people. Sennacherib's army they had their own internal problems. They're gone. The Talmud says that God wanted to make Chizkiyahu, Hezekiah, the Mashiach. Could just end this all now. If there are a couple of 100 years of problems, right, we could end it. They didn't. Why not? Let's look at text 7. The verse states, there's a verse in Isaiah which talks about Mashiach and talks about it's near that area where with talking about the challenge that Hezekiah had with the Assyrians, but Isaiah forecasts the Mashiach that we're still looking for, we're waiting, and says, to he who increases God's authority. He's talking about Mashiach. For him there shall be peace without end. Now, increases, you see there in the parentheses, is it's the Hebrew is lemarbe. Why does that matter? Because the M there is a mem in Hebrew. Those who know Hebrew, mem is like the m, like an M. But in Hebrew, there's a bit of an idiosyncrasy that we don't have in English. 5 of the letters change, their form changes if it's at the end of a word. There are 5 letters in Hebrew. That's the chaf, the mem, the nun, the pei, and the tzaddik. 5 of them, if it's at the end of a letter, it changes. If an A or B is the end of a letter, it looks like the same as if it's the beginning of end of a word. It's the same as the beginning of a word. These are if they're at the end of the word, it changes. And in Hebrew, you call it an end mem or an end nun. In this word of lamarba, who increases God's authority, it's the only time you find in the scripture where there's an end mem in the middle of a word. Grammatically, it doesn't make any sense. What does an end mem look? An end mem looks like a box, right? It's 4 sides. So here, to go further with the Talmud, in Siforis, in Tzipori, the north of Israel, Bar Kapara, this rabbi expounded the verse as follows. Why is it that every letter mem that appears in the middle of a word is an open mem? And there's in the parentheses, there's a letter you may recognize. But the mem in Lamarba, which is a closed mem, which really, we only have closed mems at the end of a word. The closed mem indicates that God wanted to make Hezekiah the Messiah, as I mentioned before. And he sought to make Sennacherib and he wanted Sennacherib and the Assyrians to be that challenge that brings the Messiah. So why didn't God Hezekiah was a great guy. Why didn't God say, okay, this is where we're going to bring the Mashiach now? The divine attribute of justice said to God, Master of the universe, if David, king of Israel, and he was Hezekiah's ancestor, who recited numerous songs and praises before you, you did not make the Messiah. Then Hezekiah, for whom you performed all these miracles, and yet he did not sing any songs of gratitude before you, will you really make him the Messiah? Because of this, the mem closed. So in other words, it's closed. In other words, he's boxed out. Hezekiah is boxed out. That's why what this rabbi in the Talmud is saying. Why is there that odd closed mem, which only belongs at the end of a word? Why is it in the middle of the word? Because what Isaiah is saying is that God would have wanted. Now, currently, what's going on is Hezekiah and the Assyrians. God would have wanted you to be the Messiah, but you were boxed out. Why weren't you boxed out? Because you have so many good things going on. Why don't you ever say thank you? He must have said thank you somewhere. He was a good guy, but he didn't say thank you enough. Why don't you recognize your blessings? So the Talmud there is saying, teaching us that being cognizant of our blessings and being cognizant that God is the source of blessings is a really big deal, even for a king, a great guy like Hezekiah. And now we want to explore that a little bit. Text 8:8. This is from Genesis. God creates the world. First, so God creates, says there's matter is created. There's the soil, the trees, and the animals, and then at the end, God creates humans. Text A. How does the Torah say? Torah says that no tree of the field was yet on earth, nor did any herb of the field yet grow. So the way this is the unpacking of creation. God creates an earth, but there's no vegetation. Why not? Because God had not brought rain upon the earth, and there was no person to work the soil. Two things. There was no rain, and there were no people. What does one have to do with the other? So if you look at Rashi, who's the primary commentary in the Torah, he explains. God had not brought rain. Why did not bring rain? Because there was no people. Why? Because there was no one to recognize the benefit of rain. God wanted, if a tree falls in the forest, there's no one here to hear it, as it really fall. God's saying, why am I going to bring rain, which is a blessing to earth, when there's nobody to recognize that I'm doing something good? I'm going to wait till there are people who need rain, recognize rain, and say, oh, Baruch Hashem, it's raining. When the human came and understood that rain was essential to the world, prayed for it, and it fell. And then the trees and herbs sprouted. So in other words, again, the primary commentary in the Torah, Rashi, is saying, our recognizing God's blessings is elemental to the whole structure of what God wanted out of the world. God created a world. Why does God need a world? God's infinite. You're bored? Part of this is as an exercise of connection with beings who feel disconnected from God, don't feel totally dependent on God, and we work to create a relationship. Right in the beginning, it says, I'm not even bringing rain until there's someone to say, thank you. Because that thank you, even though we're little tiny humans and God's God, God wants a relationship. And when you say thank you to someone, they give you a gift, but you're giving them a gift also, because what you're doing is you're creating this bond. Gratitude is a very, you're giving yourself a gift. Also to be is this sense of someone cares about me, and I recognize it, and I appreciate what you did. Now, in Torah thinking, that takes sometimes some humility, because feeling grateful means I didn't have something and someone came along and gave it to me, and maybe if everything's about a power structure, now I just acknowledged that I'm a little lower on the list. It's okay. That humility is good for us to recognize. Get up in the morning and say, why shouldn't I hear? Why shouldn't you? Don't take it for granted. If I do hear, I say, thank you, God, for another day where I can hear. And in text 9, we find from the Medrash. Okay, that's on top of 58. Why does the Torah punish an ingrate so excessively? Because ingratitude is like heresy. Heretic is also essentially ungrateful. Heresy means denying God. What does that have to do with ingratitude? You have a life. Why would you think that this just comes naturally? That's what we're saying. Ingratitude is a theological issue. And here we have a letter from the Rabbi written. It's a little bit long, but it's by the grace of God. This is from 1956. He wrote this to someone. By the grace of God, the 4th of Shvat, 5716, Brooklyn, reading and blessing. In response to your letter from the month of Kislev, this had been several months before, in which you write about we don't know the name of the person because obviously it's not, that's personal, which you write about your current situation, how in your entire life you've never experienced anything good. Someone wrote to the Rebbe that I've never had any good in my life. And then you ask for a blessing for your wife and children. Apparently you don't notice the contradiction in your own letter. You tell me you have had nothing good from God, and say, please, I want a blessing from wife and children. Someone whom the creator of the world arranged a match. Precisely, you're married, and bless them with children. May they live many long years. To say that he never experienced anything good in his life is ingratitude to a shocking degree. So how can you didn't even, you take it so much for granted, you don't even realize the inconsistency. There are hundreds and thousands of people who pray every day to be blessed with children and who to give away everything they own for a single son or daughter, and still have not merited this blessing. May God answer the prayer soon. And you who did receive this blessing, apparently without having to pray for it excessively, do not recognize the wealth and happiness therein. And write in your letter what was mentioned above. So everybody didn't want to say again that you never got any blessing, because even saying it, articulating that, I think was a little difficult for him. Moreover, you conclude that you don't believe that God will ever help you, but you believe it is decreed upon you to be more miserable your entire life. Obviously, I don't mean that one has to be poor or unhealthy. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that maybe the meager income and poor health stem from the fact that you don't recognize God's blessing in an area even more important than perfect health and a comfortable income, which is the blessing of having sons and daughters who follow in God's ways. Before I go further, it's dangerous to draw a causality between this and someone's situation. But I was making a statement because he can. He's saying, there's a God who can, and a God who loves you. And that recognizing that you have blessings in your life is itself a magnet for blessings. It's a lightning rod for blessings. So I don't want you to be poor and miserable the way you are, but maybe, just like if someone says to me, I have problems at home. What's going on? I got this, I got that. If I can help, if it's a problem, I think I can help. If I know a good doctor or a good lawyer, or whatever it is, I want to help them as a human being. As a rabbi, say, have mezuzahs. Have you checked your mezuzahs? I believe in that. I believe that mezuzahs are part of the conduit for blessing to the home. Can I guarantee anything? I can't guarantee anything, but mezuzahs are important. Attitude is also important. And what he's saying here is that the attitude of being grateful to God is part of the conduit that helps bring the blessing. When one doesn't recognize the blessings they already have, especially when they ignore them to such a degree that it's expressed in the harsh expressions used in your letter, why is it so shocking they don't receive additional blessings from above? God's giving you the blessings, and you're so not attuned to them that you don't even think they're blessings. You're willing to articulate you've never had any blessings in your life. That's not encouraging to God to give you more. And text 11. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I hope that these few lines will suffice to open your eyes to see the situation for what it is. When you begin to serve God with true internal joy, God's blessings related to health and income will certainly increase, as can be understood from many sources, including the Zohar, which is the Kabbalah, with blessing signed by the Rebbe's secretary in the Rebbe's name. Now let's look at 11 is another point from the Rebbe in his in a different letter. Another point which is no less important. Another point which is no less important is that which is explained in our Holy Torah, which is that the number of blessings one receives is dependent to a certain degree on how the person receives them. Acting in consonance with the recognition of God's kindness increases the flow of blessings and their capacity to receive them in both the near and long term. Think about someone in your life who you could help if you give and they're totally oblivious to what you gave. Don't say thank you. Don't recognize it. Are you motivated? No, I'm just a human being. God's God. But what God's saying is, it's not about God being slighted. It's about us being emotionally and spiritually mature to recognize that we have a God who cares about us, and that draws more blessing. You look at text 12. This is also when a Jew is careful with their speech, they do not allow any expression that is the opposite of blessing to exit their mouths. Then they experience only good and abundance of blessing. The Rebbe was very careful about speech. Words are words, right? So words are only words. Words are not action. But words mean something. And one of the things that the Rebbe used to say was to speak positively. And therefore, someone asked me, I mean, that's the way I was trained, but I hope I'm conscious about it. If someone asked me how I'm doing, I usually say, fine, thank God. It's just the way, because you want it to recognize. And even if something is not doing well, you don't want to hide your eyes from it, and you got to acknowledge it and deal with it, but also not to be too harsh about it. So, for example, just use an example that they're about to do. If a doctor has, God forbid, someone has a terminal diagnosis, for a doctor to say, you'll be dead in 3 months, it's a horrible thing to say. And there's no need for it. You don't articulate that. Say, we can't, there's something more we can do. And how much time do I have, doctor? Statistics are could be 3 months. That's very different than articulating negativity like that. And part of it is also in the gratitude thing, just to look at what we have, even the problems, leave room for God to help us out with a faith that God could help us. And let's do text 13. This is a story which we actually referenced a couple of weeks ago. I don't know why they put it in again, but I don't write this curriculum. This is text 13. In his early years, before he went public with his teachings, and disciples came from afar and wide to learn from him, the founder of the Hasidic movement, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, was an incessant traveler. So Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement, and he was incognito for many years. What would he do? He would go from place to place. He would tell stories. He would inspire people. One day, Rabbi Israel arrived in a village and made his way to the study hall. There in a corner sat an ancient Torah scholar over his books, wrapped in towels and film. This was the village, the Hebrew word is Porush, an ascetic, who led a life of holy seclusion. Actually, the way the story goes, he was in his own room where he could have seclusion. From sunrise to sunset, not a morsel of bread or a sip of water would pass his lips. He spoke to no one and never lifted his eyes from the sacred tomes. For more than 50 years, he had kept this regimen utterly removed from the mundane cares of material life. So this guy's a monk, a Jewish one. So why was this stranger pestering him? How are things, he was inquiring. So the Baal Shem Tov came in, he walked over to him and said, how are things doing? He interrupted his studies. He interrupted this guy's studies. Is there enough to eat? Is everyone healthy? The ascetic made no reply, hoping the stranger would go away. The stranger only leaned closer. His questioning grew more insistent. Impatiently, the ascetic waved him away, pointing him to the door. Rabbi, the stranger, who is Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, now asked, why are you denying God his livelihood? The words had their desired effect. The man was roused to indignant attention. God's livelihood? The audacity of this uncouth peasant. What are you saying? He demanded in a thunderous voice. How dare you disturb me with such blasphemous babble? And only what King David, the sweet singer of Israel, proclaims in his Psalms, replied the Baal Shem Tov. Tell me, Rabbi, what is the meaning of the verse? And you, the Holy One, who dwells by or on the praises of Israel. We mortal beings, continued the Baal Shem Tov, when the Parashas ascetic made no reply, subsist on the sustenance that God provides us in his great kindness. But what does God subsist on? On the praises of Israel. When one Jew asks another, how are things? And his fellow responds by praising and saying, thank God. By thanking the Almighty, they're nourishing God. That's that's his energy, deepening his involvement with his creation. This is what God wants to hear from us: a recognition, an awareness, and a gratitude. And that's the language of, in text 14, give thanks to God because he is good, for his kindness is everlasting. We thank God. And to your point around the, and you may have heard this from me already. You know, Malki's father is, he's an Auschwitz survivor, and he turned 90 in October, and we all went to Auschwitz, the whole family. So 97 of us. He's an Auschwitz survivor. He lost family in Auschwitz. He went through Auschwitz. His oldest son was killed in a car accident. He's had enough sorrows in his life. First of all, the whole trip with his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the whole trip to Auschwitz, the theme was, and he told this to the family, the theme was this verse. This verse in text 14, give thanks to God because his good, his kindness is everlasting. Didn't go back to moan, to groan. If someone can have complaints to God, he's right there. He's got enough to complain about. The whole theme of the trip, and he made this clear to the whole family, and everything was going through as we were going through Auschwitz. He is thankful to God for his life, and he's thankful to God for what God gave him. There are things he doesn't understand, and you may have heard this from me too. One of the things that I'll probably never forget, when his son, my son Laser, should live and be well, is named for his uncle who was killed in a car crash. Laser. Laser was born in 1990. It was 1988. He was killed in a car crash. Maki's oldest brother. So his wife was 3 days away, 4 days away from 3 days away from having a child, their first child. They hadn't changed. She did it yet. So that child is eventually, 15 years ago, 14 years ago, she got engaged. The mother remarried, actually live here in New Jersey. So Malki's niece, our niece, is growing up with her stepfather for all these years. Wonderful family, beautiful. She gets engaged. Gets engaged. It's a very raw time for my in-laws. They're reliving everything. The son can't be here to celebrate with the daughter for the wedding. It's an emotional time. We all know this. We all knew this was coming. We wanted to celebrate. We wanted to be sensitive to them. How they're going to feel. So we made a party right here in the atrium of this building, just for the siblings, just for my in-laws' children, and they're all married, so the children and their spouses, with the new bride and groom. And just, we wanted to give them space. We wanted to give them a safe space. So even her mother and her stepfather, they didn't come. I didn't have to ask them not to come. They knew what was going on. They wanted to keep a safe space just around family. So we're there. We have some tables, we have some food. So Simcha, she just got engaged, the new groom. My father-in-law stands up to speak. With he has a l'chaim, he wants to say l'chaim. He starts to cry. He's just crying. He has what to cry about. He says, I want to say l'chaim and ask God to continue blessing me like he's blessed me until now. And I'm stunned. And he says, and he's speaking in Yiddish. He says, God has blessed me my entire life. I have things about my life I don't understand. Maybe I'll never understand. But I know that I am very blessed. And I will not allow my questions to get in the way of me celebrating this newest blessing, which is that my granddaughter's engaged. It was mind-boggling to me. But his point was, again, we're saying, can you say that just someone's committed and they get all good? No one gets all good. Thank God, no one gets all his bad. Most of us didn't, we're not in Auschwitz, and thank God we didn't, whatever else the loss he had. He's able to look at it and say, it's a very painful part of my life. I have a blessed life. I'm never going to give up on recognizing it. And actually, this was the verse we used. And finally, on text 15, says there's a commentary, an expression in the Talmud. Even though the wine belongs to its owner, gratitude is given to the one who pours it. Imagine the Talmud was say thank you. The waiter came over and took care of you. Say, why not? I paid for it. They don't own the place. Say, someone did something to you. Say thank you. It's good for you. Not only to feel, but to express. So here's key points. I'm sorry, even though the wine belongs to its gratitude is given to the one who pours it, that's the Talmud, and now here. Property that is declared chayrim can never be redeemed from temple treasury. That's number one. Number two, declaring your property chayrim indicates a lack of gratitude for the blessings in life. Number three, practicing gratitude is the key to bringing more blessings into your life. The opposite leads to preventing blessings from coming into your life. And finally, number four, we can accustom ourselves to thinking in terms of gratitude by speaking and acting that way. Just say thank you. Okay. So if there are any questions, we can move it. If not, wish you not only a great Memorial Day, but today is Lag BaOmer. It's a holiday, a spiritually powerful day for blessing. And we have 5 o'clock. We have a Lag BaOmer celebration barbecue. Something to celebrate right there. Okay. A good week, everybody.